Hey everybody! You all know that I love my pork. It's a magical meat and a great foundation for just about any sausage. But I've got a couple of family members who can't tolerate the sweet swine. And while I do consider this to be a defect, I still love my family. So today I'm making them a special batch of all beef snack sticks. It's a spicy smoked pepperoni stick that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the spice blend, and this is a pretty busy one compared to a lot of the sausages I've made, and that's just because I want to get a ton of flavor down into these sticks. So let's begin with the salt, and you know I like to keep my salt between 2 and 3% in most of the sausages that I make, and since this one is going to dry and condense down and really concentrate that saltiness a little bit, I'm going to keep it on the low end at 2%, so this is 90 grams of plain salt. Here I've got 120 grams of non-fat powdered milk, and this is going to give us a little protein boost, help bind everything together. And there are a lot of commercial binders that you can buy, but this non-fat powdered milk is readily available and does a pretty decent job. And since this is a pepperoni that I'm making today, I've got 4 different kinds of pepper that I'm going to be using. I'm going to start over here with 35 grams of paprika. This is going to give us a nice red color and a lot of pepper flavor, but it's not going to bring any heat to the show. So for that, I've got 10 grams of cayenne pepper. That's going to bring a little spiciness. It's not going to be a ton, not going to hurt anybody, but it's going to have a nice bite to it. Here I've got 10 grams of crushed red pepper flake, and those are just going to be scattered about in here, so every now and then you're going to take a bite. It's going to give you a little how do you do. And I've got 15 grams of ground black pepper. Now here I've got 10 grams of fennel seed that I'm going to grind up in my coffee grinder. And that is what's going to kind of set this sausage apart from just a spicy snack stick and give it its real signature pepperoniness. I've got 10 grams of garlic powder and 15 grams of sugar just to kind of round everything out. And in addition to these, I will be adding in 34 grams of encapsulated citric acid to give it that kind of tart bite that pepperoni has, because I'm not going to be fermenting this sausage. I'm going to fake it with the acid, but I'm not going to add that in until the very end, right before this goes into the casings. And of course, I've got 11 grams of Pink Cure #1 to kill any gnarly bacteria that's going to try and grow in there. But I'm not going to mix this in with all these other spices. I'm going to hold it back, and I'm going to mix it in with the liquid to get it dissolved before I blend it into the sausage. Let's talk about meat, and I've got an interesting cut for you today. Most often, I cut lean game or beef with pork fat to get to around 30% fat content. But this is going to be an all beef sausage, so I had to find a good source of beef fat, which isn't as easy to find as pork fat is. At least for me, it's not. This is beef head meat, which is super fatty. These bags are probably 75 to 85% fat with some lean bits scattered about here and there. And I've used this before, and what you're going to want to know is that the lean bits are very tough and they're full of a lot of connective tissue. So you're going to want to make sure that it's partially frozen to the point where it's still pretty hard when you grind it. Otherwise, it's going to want to gum up your grinder. I also double grind the leaner pieces so they don't come out too chewy. And there's not enough lean in here to make the sausage. It's mainly the fat that I'm after, so I'll add in enough lean beef. I think I've got some top round around here somewhere to get to that 30% fat content that I like. Wow, take a look at all this fat. And this stuff isn't even very lean. This is probably pushing more like 85% fat content, so I'm definitely gonna kick in some beef around here, some nice lean stuff to get this balanced out. But what a great source for beef fat. If you're making venison sausage or something and you don't want to add in pork fat, this is a great way to source some beef fat and not too expensive. So let me get some lean beef out and then we'll get everything weighed up and get to grinding. I'm using 250 milliliters of liquid today. That is just about 1 cup. And I'll go ahead and dissolve my cure in there. I'm just using plain water today, but of course, beer and wine work really well. Just make sure your liquid is really cold before you put it in there. Now let's get our spices down in there. I'll put about half in there, mix it around, then get the other half in there and mix some more. And as usual, I'm just gonna mix the heck out of this for probably a good 10 minutes until this stuff gets really sticky. Oh yeah, that's nice and sticky now. So now it's time to go and fry up my little test patty to check for flavor. Check out that bite. Very good. And now's the time when you want to adjust those seasonings and get it just right before you put it into the casings. This is really good, and I haven't even added in the citric acid yet, but I am considering throwing in a little more fennel. That is entirely up to you, so always test your sausage. And now I'll put this out into the refrigerator overnight to let that cure work its magic. Check it out, everybody. New piece of equipment here. I just got this 10-pound stuffer in, and this is a pretty big upgrade for me. Kind of an unintended upgrade, however. I never thought that I could break that little stuffer over there. But during the move, I dropped that thing off a pretty high shelf, and something got tweaked in there. So now, when I crank it down, it's not completely true, and it kind of just started to tear itself apart, bent the shaft really badly, so I put a new shaft in there, and it's still just a little bit off. This was kind of a stretch on the budget right now, considering we just got into the house here, so hit me with the likes and subscribes and help me out on this one, because I gotta pay for this thing somehow. I'm using 21mm collagen casings again today. This is what I always use for the snack sticks. They come in a transparent version and a red version if you want, but we're gonna get a lot of redness just from the seasoning in the sausage and the smoke and the cure, so I don't see any reason to go with a red casing. Now these work really great, and they make sure you get a nice even sausage from tip to tail. Oh yeah. So, because I had those issues with the stuffer, this has been in the refrigerator for an extra day, which is not a big deal, but it has set up and it's very firm right now, and that's going to be hard to push through the stuffer. So, this happens to you, you're just going to loosen that up with a little bit of water. And it's also going to be time to add in the encapsulated citric acid right before stuffing the sausage. Now, make sure you're using encapsulated citric acid and not just plain food grade citric acid, because this stuff has a little coating on the acid that's designed to break down and release the acid into the sausage when it hits a certain temperature. If you put this in too early, they can start to break down and ruin the texture of the sausage. So this is going to be the last ingredient I put in there. Work out all that surface air as much as you can. And then give that a good slam down into the bottom of there. Pack it all in really good. You're just trying to trap as little air as possible down in there. Well, that was certainly nice getting through a whole strand of casings without having to stop and reload the stuffer. It was a little tough. I could have loosened up the mix a little bit more, but I got through it pretty good. Just remember when you're making the snack sticks like this to go slow on your crank there. Remember, you're trying to jam a bunch of meat from a 4-inch cylinder down and through a 3/8-inch cylinder, and it does take a lot of force. So go nice and easy on that, take your time, and you're going to end up with some really good sausages. Now, if you've watched these videos of mine before, you're going to know that the first step is to let these hang at room temperature for around an hour. Get these casings really dry and get that filling on the inside to start really sticking to the inside of that casing so they won't come apart. So I've got them here in the sausage closet. I got a little fan going underneath them today. And we'll let these hang out for an hour, and then we'll move them outside to a really cool smoker to finish that conditioning. Now we've got these moved out to a very low smoker. I'm talking 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're just going to keep them out here for another hour, and we're just raising the temperature up real slow and getting these casings really, really dry. The idea here is that we'll get the casings very dry, and then when we bring up the temperature, start the smoke, we'll put a little water in the water pan, and these things will be really thirsty at that point and ready to soak up that moist smoke. After drying out in here at that low temp for about an hour, these are nice and dry and they're ready to take on the smoke. So I've got some water down in the water pan. I just got some hickory pellets started down in there, and now I'm going to raise the temperature to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's at this low stage, this initial stage of smoking, where these are going to suck up a lot of smoke flavor. You keep this down around 140, 150 degrees, and the outsides of these will allow for that smoke to penetrate in, get really deep into the meat. Once these outsides come up to around 170 degrees, they're essentially cooked on the outside, and you're not going to get a lot of smoke penetration. You'll get some accumulation on the outside, but that's not really what you're looking for. Oh yeah, after a couple hours at 140, they're taking on a real nice color. Starting to get a little dry and wrinkled up a little bit. That's good. And now you're going to bump the temperature up to 150 and continue to dry these out. And you can either continue to add smoke or you can take the smoke out at this point. Just depends on how you like it. And even if this is how dry you want them, you could bump your smoker up to 180, cook these to an internal temperature of 155, and you'll be done real quick. I want to dry this batch out a little more, concentrate that flavor down, just because that's what kind of a mood I'm in today. So I'm going to bump it up to 150. I'll keep the smoke going today, and then I'm going to give that another 2 hours, and we'll come out and see how they are. All right, we're looking good. It's starting to get dark out here, so I wanted to give you one last look at these before I finish them off. You see, I've been going for a couple hours at 150 now, and they are getting that nice wrinkly texture, kind of drying out and concentrating that flavor. It doesn't mean they're going to be dry on the inside. There's plenty of fat to keep them moist as long as that doesn't run out, but that won't happen until they hit an internal temperature of 175, 180, so don't let that happen. You'll ruin your batch of sausage. So now the last thing to do is to raise the smoker temperature up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and when I get an internal temperature of 155 degrees, I'm going to pull these out. I'm going to hit them with some ice water to shock them and stop that cooking and keep them from overcooking. Oh yeah. These things look perfect, and they smell great too. But I'm not going to try them out until they cool all the way down. So I've got them back in the sausage closet here with a little fan on to dry off any excess moisture from that cool down. And then once they get dried off, I'll pop them into the refrigerator, and we'll try them out in the morning. Whew, I can't wait. And now, let's see how we did. These things look and smell great. I got just the right level of dryness that I wanted in this batch. Got a nice snap to it. Let's take a look on the inside. Oh, it's very good. You can see that all the fat bits are still intact. We've got varying grain size of meat in there. Looks just about perfect. Of course, what really matters is the taste. Check out that bite. Mmm. Oh, nailed it. That is everything you want in a pepperoni stick. The mouthfeel of an all-beef sausage is always different than if you mix some pork in there. It's never quite as tender. I'm not sure if tender is exactly the word I'm looking for, but you know, it's just a little different. But it's still great, and of course this recipe is going to work with any meat you want. You throw in some pork fat in there, whatever you like. So I'll be adding some hog into my own personal batch for sure. It's nice and spicy, but it's not too hot, and that little hint of fennel is just right. If you go too hard on that fennel, it can get a little licoricey flavored on you, and nobody wants that. But it's that tangy bite from the citric acid that really brings this home. It does a great, albeit not perfect job of mimicking the flavor of a nice fermented sausage. I can honestly see dicing this up and spreading it all over a pizza. So, whether you're averse to the little piggies or you love them, give this one a try, and I know you're gonna love it. Thanks for watching. This makes me want to make a batch of summer sausage too. Stay tuned.